seed knowledge that allows our thinking faculty to plant, fertilize, and water. By fertilizing and watering this information, we aid it in blossoming into a greater wisdom. But if we're trained to simply regurgitate information without analyzing it, the seed will not germinate and thus will not grow to its full potential. That being said, the UNIA-ACL gives us the foundational knowledge that can help us to build a successful relationship. Successful relationships are a necessary component of an independent, self-sufficient, and sovereign nation. Successful relationships are the load-bearing wall of civilization or nation. If the relationship is destroyed or weakened, the civilization or nation will also be destroyed or weakened. Of all relationships, love relationships are the most significantly impactful. When there is true love, the majority of one's choices are made based on how that decision will affect the object of that love. The love we have for our children, for example, may influence us to compromise our own principles for the child's survival. The love we have for our spouse can persuade us to remain faithful to our agreed upon relationship rules, even if those rules prevent us from fulfilling our individual desires. The love we have for the community we associate with, more likely than not, will determine what actions we will be willing to take to protect that community. The degree of love we have for a thing will determine the degree of action we are willing to take for that thing. There is a degree of love that transcends all fear of consequences for one's actions. In other words, the greater the degree of love we have, the more willing we'll be to act despite the potential penalty. Selflessness is an important key to all successful relationships. In the UNIA-ACL, in the chapter entitled The Mate, the first verse states that when one person in the relationship is selfless, the relationship has a good chance of survival. When both people are selfless, it stands an even greater chance of survival. But when neither is selfless, the relationship is destined to fail. The degree of selflessness determines the degree of relationship success. If one person in the relationship, or on the team, or in the organization, or whatever type of relationship it is doing most of the hard work and has to assume most of the responsibilities, that person will be too weak to perform well in other areas. And it would be selfish for the others in the relationship to expect more from that person. If one person has to assume the responsibilities in one area of the relationship, it's only fair for the others to assume the responsibilities in other areas of the relationship. I had a friend in Southeast DC back in the killer 90s that told me that fair exchange ain't no robbery. In other words, if what you're giving to me is equal to what I'm giving to you, all is fair. I'll go further to say that equality is not only measured in quantity, but it's also measured in quality. The word itself is equality, not equantity. If I give you a pound of raw kale, but you only give me an ounce of stevia, it can be argued that that's a fair exchange. It's far easier to grow kale than it relatively easy for a man to get sex and food, but it's far more difficult to obtain and maintain a house. There's no comparison between the two. So you can't seriously think that that's a fair exchange. But fellas, if a woman is raising your child while you're providing your family with what they need, this is a great example of a fair exchange. Ultimately, those in the relationship have to determine what's fair and what's not fair. Relationship expectations must be made clear to everyone in the relationship. If one feels that he or she can't live up to those expectations, that should also be made clear. Some expectations may need to be altered, and perhaps some that may be unrealistic may need to be done away with altogether. If the expectation is based on pop culture, more likely than not, it is an unrealistic expectation that needs to be discarded for the sake of the relationship. Again, successful relationships are the load-bearing wall of nations and civilization. This has been Daku Agabo.